Attention to every single tennis enthusiast tuning in from the Philippines. The energetic crowds in Doha and everyone streaming from all four corners of the globe, drop whatever you are doing right now. We have a massive development pouring out of the Middle East at this very moment. A story so significant it has sent absolute tremors through the entire WTA landscape. The Qatar Open is on the brink of its first serve, but forget what you thought was the main headline. It is not just about the return of the world's #1 player. It extends far beyond the narrative of the newly crowned Australian Open champion. No, the story that has set the internet on fire is something else entirely. This is the plot twist that has tournament directors in Doha rewriting their schedules and fans back in Manila holding their breath as we are staring down the barrel of a major collision course. The scenario unfolding before our eyes rivals any Hollywood blockbuster script featuring Alexandra Eala, Iga Swiatek, and Elena Rybakina, all converging on the exact same battleground. If the rumors swirling around the official draw ceremony hold any water, prepare yourselves because we are likely approaching the most volatile and thrilling week of tennis Alexandra Eala has ever played. We can now officially confirm the reports are accurate. Alexandra Eala is locked into the main draw, meaning she has completely bypassed the grueling qualifying gauntlet. The potential showdowns are absolute nightmares for her opponents and dreams come true for the spectators, creating an electricity in Qatar that is simply palpable right now. Welcome to your ultimate comprehensive breakdown where we are not just skimming the headlines today, but diving deep into the implications. We are mapping out the future destiny of Asian tennis in real time, and deconstructing the strategic minefield that awaits on the hard courts of Doha. We are examining Ella's hunger for vengeance and analyzing the impenetrable dominance of the Iron Fortress that is Elena Rybakina. But first, we must contextualize this moment because you cannot grasp the magnitude of Doha without looking back at the absolute war Ella survived in Abu Dhabi less than 48 hours ago. Ella was locked in a brutal dogfight, and that clash with Ali Alexander Sasnovich is pivotal because it reveals the true character of the player landing in Qatar today. She was on the ropes a set down and trailing 0-4 in the deciding set. Let me emphasize that situation for anyone new to the sport. At this elite professional level, rallying from a 0-4 deficit in the third set against a seasoned veteran like Sasnovich is a statistical anomaly nearly impossible. It is usually a guaranteed death sentence. The stadium had fallen silent and the pundits were already drafting her elimination obituary for the tournament. Then the switch flipped and we witnessed that signature resilience, that refusal to yield that is quickly becoming the Ella trademark. She did not just break serve. She dug herself out of that grave, fended off match points, forced the tiebreak, and seized the victory against all odds. That triumph was not merely a mark in the win column on the score sheet. It was a loud declaration of intent. It was a warning flare fired across the Persian Gulf straight to Doha, screaming, "I am not here to participate, I am here to conquer." Even though she eventually bowed out in the quarterfinals to the powerful Ekaterina Alexandrova, there is absolutely zero dishonor in that defeat considering Alexandrova is a relentless force of nature on these hard courts. In hindsight, that loss was a strategic blessing in disguise, providing Ella the exact window of time needed to board a plane and arrive in Doha immediately. Here's where the breaking news takes a sharp turn because the original roadmap was simple but grueling fight through the qualifying rounds. Despite sitting at a career best ranking of 45, a historic milestone we will touch on shortly, she was slated for a weekend of exhaustion in the qualifiers. She was expected to battle tooth and nail just for a ticket to the main stage, but the tennis gods clearly had different plans for her this week. We received official confirmation just hours ago that Veronika Kupermatova has withdrawn from the Qatar Open. Why is this critical? Because that withdrawal created a vacancy in the main draw, and looking at the alternate list, I'll guess who was sitting at the top. The first player in line to snatch that golden opportunity was none other than the Philippine sensation Alexandra Eala. There are no qualifying matches, no fatigue from three-setters before the event begins. She steps onto the big stage with fresh legs and the confidence of a world number 45. However, stepping directly into the main draw of a prestigious WTA 1000 event like Qatar is a dangerous double-edged sword. You are thrown into the deep end instantly to swim with the sharks, and there are absolutely no warm-up matches to find your rhythm here. Just take a look at the apex predators circling the waters in this tournament. You have the top seed, Swiatek, the queen of clay and three-time Doha champion who ruled this venue with an iron grip from 2022 to 2024. You have the second seed, Elena Rybakina, the Ice Queen herself, fresh off hoisting the trophy in Melbourne at the Australian Open and arguably the hottest player on the planet right now. The shock reverberating through all of Qatar is not clickbait or hype. It is a genuine reaction to the draw. It is the thrill and fear that Ella, the giant slayer who stunned Swiatek in Miami last year, might face her again or worse, have to run the gauntlet against Rybakina. For the next hour, I'm going to walk you through exactly why this specific tournament is the pivot point for Ella's 2027 campaign. We are going to dissect the metrics behind her new ranking and break down her tactical adjustments. Furthermore, we will run a point-by-point simulation of how she stacks up against titans like Swiatek and Rybakina. Let's pause and appreciate the data because the numbers do not lie. Alexandra Eala has officially breached the top 45. Do you realize the historical weight of this achievement? We are talking about the highest watermark ever achieved by a Filipino player in WTA history. She is shattering records weekly. Remember that at the start of 2026, she was barely hovering outside the top 100. The naysayers claimed she lacked the stature, argued her serve was too soft for the modern power era, and labeled her a junior prodigy who would flame out. Fast forward to February 2027, and she holds a WTA 125 title and is striking fear into the elite. Alex Eala is coming fresh off a sensational semifinal finish during that fairy tale campaign in Miami. That performance earned her a straight shot into the main draw here in Qatar. What is truly stunning the tennis world isn't just her talent. How violently fast she has rocketed up the rankings. The secret is officially out, and the locker room chatter has shifted from curiosity to genuine concern. Egot is well aware of the danger she poses. Even the Australian Open champion Elena Rybakina is keeping a close eye on her. When Eala steps into the players' lounge in Doha today, the atmosphere is going to be different. Heads are going to turn. She has shed the label of being just that promising prospect from the Rafa Natal Academy. She has evolved into a legitimate threat to the establishment. Why should the top seeds be worried? Because she wields that lefty forehand like a weapon and possesses a competitive spirit that simply refuses to bend. The evidence was all over the court in Abu Dhabi. Her timing is impeccable, taking the ball on the rise, absorbing heavy pace, and utilizing that southpaw spin to carve out angles that most players can only dream of. However, the most terrifying upgrade she has unveiled in 2026 is her sheer physical durability. You do not claw your way back from a 0-4 deficit in a deciding third set without possessing world-class conditioning. That kind of comeback demands a level of mental steel that typically takes veterans a decade to forge. Yet, here is Eala showcasing that veteran mindset while she is still just 20 years of age. Nevertheless, the challenge in Doha is a completely different beast. The courts in Qatar are notorious for being slow, gritty hard courts where the ball bites into the surface and kicks up high. Plus, you have the unpredictable winds swirling inside the Khalifa International Tennis Complex to deal with. Historically, these heavy, slow conditions are tailor-made for exactly one woman, Egot. That leads us perfectly into our top story of the day. We need to address the elephant in the room, or perhaps more accurately, the Polish powerhouse standing in the doorway. We are talking about Iga Swiatek. If you consult the record books, the Qatar Open isn't just a tournament for her. It is essentially her personal playground. Just look at the trophy case. She dominated here in 2022, defended it in 2023, and completed the hat trick in 2024. The surface seems designed specifically for her lasso forehand and heavy topspin. However, she arrives in Doha this week carrying some scars, not physical injuries but psychological wounds. She fell short at the Australian Open, and that iron grip she once held on the world #1 ranking has slipped as the chasing pack finally caught up to her. And undoubtedly lurking in the subconscious of the Polish star is the memory of Miami 2026. Do you recall that match? That was the defining moment that shifted the trajectory for Alex. It stands as the shock of the season so far. Eala didn't just win, she dismantled Swiatek in straight sets. There were no excuses, no lucky bounces, and no injury timeouts involved. It was a masterclass where she thoroughly outplayed the favorite. She rushed the Swiatek forehand, punished the second serve, and physically matched the best mover on tour stride for stride. Now picture the absolute chaos in Doha if the draw gods decide to generate a rematch as early as the second round. To say Qatar would be buzzing is a massive understatement for Swiatek. It represents a nightmare scenario. Eala is a serious problem because of that southpaw advantage. History shows that Swiatek can get uncomfortable against crafty left-handers who know how to jam her up and neutralize her backhand execution. Eala operates with zero fear, an attitude that Swiatek sometimes finds difficult to suppress when the momentum shifts. If they do collide in Qatar, here is exactly how the tactics will play out. Swiatek will attempt to impose her will and turn the match into a physical war. She will leverage the heavy Doha conditions to push Eala deep behind the baseline and grind her down. Eala's counter strategy must mirror her performance in Miami. She needs to hold her ground, step inside the court, and strike the ball on the rise. She simply cannot afford to let ego reset the rally. The real headline here is the shift in perception. For the first time in years, pundits are looking at a potential Swiatek versus Eala matchup and thinking, you know what, this kid actually has a legitimate shot at winning. But hold on, because there is another giant lurking in this draw, Elena Rybakina. If Swiatek reigns supreme on the slower surfaces, Rybakina is the undisputed queen of first-strike tennis. Music fresh off her triumph at the Australian Open, she is a force of nature. Her confidence is currently orbiting in the stratosphere, and her service game is without question the single most devastating weapon in women's sports right now. There is a reason Rybakina is headlining this update. Eala has simply never encountered raw power like this on a major stage against a version of Rybakina playing at this peak level. A potential meeting between them would be the ultimate clash of styles. It is a classic David versus Goliath narrative. The crafty lefty spinner versus the overwhelming power server. The spectacle for the fans in Qatar will be watching to see if Ela can solve the puzzle of dismantling the Rybakina delivery. Let's be brutally honest here. If Rybakina lands 70% of her first serves, Ela is going to struggle. In fact, any player on the planet would struggle against those numbers. However, if Rybakina has an off night or if that Doha wind starts messing with her ball toss, the door opens. Ela has proven herself to be one of the premier returners among the next generation stars. She utilizes a compact swing to block the ball back deep into the court. If she can force Rybakina to move and jam the ball at her feet, we suddenly have a competitive match on our hands. Remember that Rybakina is tall and generally dislikes digging out low skidding balls. Ela's lefty forehand cross-court shot naturally dips and stays low. If she executes that pattern perfectly, it creates a tactical nightmare for a player of Rybakina's stature. The mere fact that we're seriously analyzing Ela as a threat to the reigning Australian Open champion is a testament to just how far her game has progressed. Now let's break down the tournament structure itself. As a WTA 1000 event, we're looking at a 56-player draw where the top 8 seeds receive a first-round bye. That means heavy hitters like Swiatek, Rybakina, Goff, and the defending champion Anna Samova will sit out the opening round. However, Ela enters the fray unseeded. This puts her in the danger zone. Being unseeded means there is no protection. She could face absolutely anyone in the opening round, from a qualifier to a heavy hitter. She could find herself up against another prodigy like Mira Andreeva, or she could be drawn to face a top 10 titan who missed out on a top 8 seeding immediately in round 2. The blockbuster scenario that everyone is either dreading or praying for is seeing Ela land squarely in Switzerland's quarter of the draw. Just visualize this potential gauntlet. Round 1, Ela versus a gritty veteran like Marins or Fernandez. Round 2, she faces the 9th seed Ekaterina Alexandrova in a high-stakes rematch. Then in round 3, a showdown with Aga. That is the definition of a group of death, but Ela has already proven that she thrives when the odds are stacked against her. Back in Miami, she took down Ostapenko, Keys, and Swiatek back-to-back. She does not care about the reputation of the names on the scoreboard. Finally, consider the narrative regarding the Middle East swing itself. Ela has been acclimating in the region for weeks, giving her a distinct edge in preparation. She has already fully adapted to the scorching desert heat and is dialed into the local time zone. Whereas rivals flying in from Europe or the United States are likely still battling heavy jet lag, top-tier contenders like Rybakina and Swiatek haven't played a competitive point since the Australian Open in Melbourne, meaning they could be struggling with rust, while Ela is match-tough, having already ground out 5 grueling contests in Abu Dhabi this week. Her physique is loose. Her hand-eye coordination is locked in. But the real story we need to dissect is the psychological fortress currently being constructed inside Alexandra Eala's mind. Did you catch her post-match interview following that victory over Sasnovich? She explicitly stated, "I really try to find the fight," proving she refuses to hit the panic button even when the chips are down. You can practically see the Rafa Nadal Academy DNA flowing through her veins. We know she trained alongside the legend himself and grew up worshipping that trademark never say die philosophy. However, we are witnessing an evolution where she manifests that spirit in her own unique way. She might not produce the guttural grunts famous to Nadal, but the intensity is identical. Her mannerisms differ, yet her tactical processing is a mirror image. Even when staring down a 0-4 deficit against titans like Swiatek or Rybakina, she deconstructs the game 1 point at a time in Doha. Inevitably, the scoreboard will look ugly at times. She will drop service games and she will undoubtedly stare down multiple set points against her. The terrifying realization for any opponent is that Ela simply refuses to disappear. Blast a winner past her, she resets, hit an ace, and she just steps closer to the baseline, daring you to do it again. That specific brand of mental iron is exactly what has sent shock waves through the tour. A landscape currently populated by incredible ball strikers who unfortunately tend to fold like lawn chairs when the pressure mounts. Ela represents the antithesis of that fragility. A true grinder who absolutely flourishes in the trenches, especially on the gritty, slower courts of Doha, where rallies turn into exhausting marathons. Her most lethal asset is arguably her mental cardio, a stamina that allows her to force adversaries to execute just one more shot when their legs are already burning. She will force a power hitter like Rybakina to hit 4 difficult volleys just to secure a single point. And we absolutely cannot overlook the massive X factor, the enormous Filipino expatriate community residing here. Whenever Ela steps onto the concrete in Doha, forget about it being a neutral site, it effectively transforms into a home fixture, exactly like the scenes we just witnessed in Abu Dhabi. The galleries were overflowing with Filipino fans, making deafening noise erupting after every single point. So just try to imagine the psychological weight of playing against that as the world number 1. Suddenly, the entire stadium is chanting Ela, Ela, Ela in unison, creating a visceral energy that shifts momentum and visibly rattles even the most experienced veterans. EGAT is accustomed to being the darling of the crowd. But facing Ella in the Middle East presents a rare scenario where the Polish superstar might suddenly feel like the villain of the story. When we talk about the shock of the tournament, we are referring to this electric atmosphere, something the Qatar organizers are keenly aware of because they know Ella is a box office sensation who moves tickets. Scheduling her on center court guarantees a high-voltage environment which places immense pressure on the heavy favorites while Ella seemingly absorbs that energy and grows stronger. She has repeatedly stated she competes for her flag. So if she walks out to face Rybakina with 5,000 compatriots screaming their lungs out, the dynamic shifts instantly. You might see Rybakina's serve speed dip a few mph as the tension tightens, triggering the upset alert sirens as everyone wonders what happens next. The official draw has been released, the collision course is set, and here is my fearless forecast for the Qatar Open in 2026. I am going on record to say Alexandra Eala secures a victory in her opening round. Her momentum from Abu Dhabi is simply too potent and her game too sharp, but then she runs into a seeded giant. If that opponent is Swiatek, I'm calling it a coin flip, a 50-50 split. Because while EGA is the favorite on paper, the slow conditions, the crowd history, and the fearlessness of the underdog level the playing field. If she draws Rybakina, the mountain is steeper because Elena's current form is absolutely imperious and difficult to dismantle. Nevertheless, I predict Eala steals at least one set. But the headline here is that regardless of whether she lifts the trophy or exits in round 2, Alexandra Eala has officially arrived on the big stage. She has graduated from the next-gen conversation and is firmly established in the right, now commanding respect from the locker room. The mere fact that we are seriously analyzing her statistical probability against the world number 1 and 2 without laughing proves how far she has come. The shock isn't that she is on the court with them. The true shock is the very real possibility that she could dismantle them. So the stage is perfectly constructed in Doha, and the gladiators are ready. The draw has gifted us the potential for the most dramatic week in tennis history, not just for the Philippines, but for the entire Asian continent. Alexandra Eala has punched her ticket to the main draw, while EGA Swiatek is lurking hungry for revenge and looking to settle scores. Elena Rybakina is waiting in the wings to reassert her dominance, and we are merely days away from discovering who blinks first in what promises to be a brutal war of attrition. This will be an absolute battle of nerves, and quite frankly, I haven't felt this level of anticipation for the early rounds of a WTA 1000 event in years. So make sure you are subscribed. Double check that your notifications are toggled on, because the moment that first ball is struck or the first major upset rocks the bracket, we will be right back here to analyze every angle. Will Ella deliver another earth-shattering shock to the world, or will the queens of the WTA defend their thrones? The desert is calling, Qatar is waiting. Let the games begin.